everyone. Welcome back to the Water Online Show. You are in the flow. I am your host, Travis Kennedy, here with my esteemed colleague, partner in crime, and co-host extraordinaire, the editor-in-chief of Water Online, Mr. Kevin Westerling.
What's up, Travis? Good day.
It's been a great day so far. It's going to get even better when we introduce our guests. But I wanted to take a pause and just sort of reflect on what we've experienced over the past week and a half. So we're into April 2025. It's been a roller coaster all year long about a number of different topics, whether we're talking about regulations.
You don't say.
Yeah, I mean, it comes as no surprise that us here at Water Online, the leading online destination for the water market and also powering the Water Online Show. It's no secret to us, and it's not new news to us that there's a lot of uncertainty out there in the market. And you and I took a nice little pilgrimage down to Washington, D.C. from our home city of Philadelphia just last week. And man, there was a lot going on. Tell me if I miss anything, but there was a NACWA meeting down there. There was a WEMA conference, the Water Wastewater Equipment Manufacturers Association conference. There was a water policy fly-in, all happening all at the same week. It was Water Week down in D.C. There was meetings on Capitol Hill. And there was just a lot going on, and we expected going down that, man, maybe we'll finally get some answers. We are going to be able to relay to our listeners and to our viewers some answers. So what answers do we come up with, Kev?
Well, more uncertainty. I mean, we were privy to, because of our connections, actually hear from the EPA themselves, straight from the horse's mouth. And while they are confident in their mission to provide clean air and water, they themselves were a little unsure about the road ahead. Only in the specifics, in that the incoming assistant administrator for water has not yet been confirmed. But as soon as that person gets in, I'm sure we'll be full steam ahead on policy. All this stuff will sort of get figured out as we go along, right?
We can hope so. I mean, one of the things that I took away, separate and distinct of any specifics around regulation or policy, is what are municipalities doing? Right? Are they in this freeze mode?
They still got to operate.
Right, exactly. You can't just stop providing water and wastewater services. So, you know, is it that they're not doing anything, which isn't the case, or is it are they keep on keeping on and moving forward with what it is, whatever projects they had going on? There's been a real big lean in over the past few years, and we've talked about it on this show around digital transformation. And we heard from the head of DC Water. So Keisha gave a great presentation around what they are doing at DC Water, and a lot of that leaned into advances in treatment systems, but also advances in how the actual municipality and the plants actually run, leaning more into the digital side of things. So the uncertainty around policy didn't seem to slow them down at all. It seems like they're continuing to move forward, and that's what's best for business, and what's best for society, right?
I'm old enough to remember like when the biggest issues were stuff like resiliency and digital transformation and, broken pipes.
Right, exactly.
And they're all still there, and they're all still big issues. I mean, my point being that, like, with all of the news coming forth at a breakneck speed, you can't forget, like, the day-to-day stuff that really is important for clean water.
Daily in the common, right? That's the business that we're in. So, I mean, one of the other things we took away relates to AI. I mean, there's a huge AI and digital pilot project going on that has 13 different locations. You're going to be hearing more about that on the Water Online Show, whether it's live or on In the Flow in the months to come. But at the same time, it's just another example of there's no rest in this market. There's no wait and see. So I know that there's a lot of our listeners and our viewers out there that are thinking, all right, so be that as it may, I understand we have to continue to provide water and then wastewater services to our constituents and to the members and citizens that utilize our services. But like, what should I be focused on? Right? Like we always try to do our best here on the Water Online Show to bring it down to basics, right? Day one basics. What is the most appropriate first next step? right? And so we have some answers. At least I believe we're going to have some answers, because our guest today is going to be able to sort of steer us in the right direction and highlight some of the challenges that many utilities are out there facing, some suggestions as to how to face those challenges, steps to take. And as usual, we're going to start off on step one. But before we get started, I want to go ahead and bring our guest in, powered by Water Online, on the Water Online hotline. I'd like to introduce to you Miss Pam Elardo. Pam, welcome to the Water Online Show.
Hi, Pam.
Hey, thank you. Great to be here.
So
I
Pam,
appreciate joining you today.
Oh, well, we're very happy to have you. And I was hoping you could do us a favor and go ahead and introduce yourself and what it is that you spend your days working on and your areas of expertise. So give our audience a preview.
Cool. All right. I'll start with my little brief life history. And
let's start at the beginning.
Yeah.
Right? Go way back.
Born.
Or should I say 30 seconds or less? Tell us.
I went to college, chemical and environmental engineering. After that, I joined the Peace Corps. I built water systems in remote areas of Nepal. I understand the value of the work we do very closely. I continued international work. I worked as an environmental regulator, Clean Water Act, with the Department of Ecology over here in Washington State. I ran the wastewater department here in metropolitan King County, Seattle area. And then most recently, I was in New York City. I was the deputy commissioner for the Bureau of Wastewater Treatment. I like to think of that as the top of the heap in the field. Right. And I left that 2 years ago, and I joined Brown and Caldwell. But, I once did a presentation in South Africa at the International Fecal Management Conference. I was a keynote speaker.
Didn't know there was one of those.
Yeah, that's
fun.
They actually worked the word fecal into the conference. Okay.
FMC. Gotta go.
Yeah.
I was invited by the Gates Foundation. And my first slide was a picture of a toilet. And I said, this is why I'm here today. I grew up with one of these. I had a tap with clean water coming right next to me. That was my second picture. My third picture was, that means I didn't have to do this. And I showed a picture of a girl carrying water for her family. It means I could do this. And I showed a picture of me graduating from college, which my mother, she did, that generation before me, women didn't have access to education the same way I did, right? Mm-hmm. So all of that's to say, because of the industry that we're in and that you're fans of, water and wastewater, I was able to survive my childhood, get educated, and become an active person and have a great career in this industry.
You mentioned Nepal. I think, Kevin, you summer in Nepal, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
You leave Philadelphia and
family.
spend the summers in.
Yeah. Do you summit in Nepal? Do you summit in the mountains?
I don't know. Kevin, are you a hiker?
No.
All right.
Yeah, there's some.
Well, there's no doubt. There's no doubt that you have a ton of experience, and we're going to dive into some of that experience and some of the lessons that you've learned. But I want to start, as we usually do here at the Water Online Show, on step one, the most logical next step. And the way to do that historically has been for us to talk about what the challenges are right now that water and wastewater utilities are facing. So we know about PFAS, we know about lead and copper. So those are two topics that have a tendency to get a lot of attention. So taking that into account, and certainly it's worth mentioning those, but what other challenges are out there that you see utilities, especially here domestically in the United States, struggling with?
Yeah, well, they seem to be compounding, right? And there seem to be challenges that often the solutions are opposite to each other. They're in conflict, right?
That's always the way. Always the way.
And on the surface, we need more capacity and more capability. We need a capability to respond to community flooding, future-proofing our infrastructure, whether it's from climate change, weather patterns, other disruptions to our systems. There is a lot of just impacts that are unpredictable, and we need to be ready and resilient and to respond to that. Aged and aging infrastructure. No secret. A lot of the stuff we're working with was built, back in the 60s or even some older than that. The stuff breaks, and without the strategy to allow adequate asset management programs, repair and replace cycles, aligned capital programs, you're constantly responding to emergencies. And then organizations become reactive. And that's huge. Workforce, you folks have talked about this before, workforce capability, availability, funding constraints. the role of technology and AI, managing it, evaluating it, adopting it. You can't just add a new technology and say, go for it, team, we're good. You know, without an organization ready to explore and understand what's best for them, you're gonna, we all know that often technology projects fail, and there's lots of reasons for that.
Sure.
Yeah. And the other things I would add is just the regulatory environment. We could talk all day about that. And community expectations, huge driver.
Okay. I like that. I want to come back to the community expectations part of it. But you had started at aging infrastructure, and Kevin and I are curious, and we sort of got tidbits of this last week in DC, but because it was a topic, but it wasn't as much of a topic heavy issue that was maybe 2 or 3, 4 or 5 years ago, whatever the case is. I don't know if that has to do with the infrastructure bill that was passed or what, but I'm curious, like, is it actually possible to update all of the aging infrastructure that we have in this country, like separate and distinct of the monetary part of it? Like, are we physically able to dig up all of this infrastructure and replace it all in a realistic time frame? Like, is that too big of an apple?
Well, I would challenge the term dig up. There's pipes in the ground that we've had for 100 years that are doing fantastic. But what's the role of technology in collection and distribution systems?
Right.
Instead of replacing pipes every 100 years or assuming that there's compromised pipes in your system, there's remote technologies to sense them. There's technologies about prioritizing inspection and repair and replacement. There's a lot of folks that do timed replacements, which may or may not be worth it. You might be replacing pipes you don't have to replace because the conditions that they're in are just fine. In Seattle, we have part of our wastewater system still has brick pipes. They're working great.
Pipes?
Brick.
Oh,
they're very pretty.
Yeah,
very
I
pretty.
bet. And they work?
They work. They're still in the ground. We inspect them. Send the
Man.
little robot cameras down there.
Kevin, did you know they made pipes out of brick?
No, I knew they made them out of wood and,
plastic and of course metal, but like brick, that's new. And all right, well, keep going.
Yeah.
All right.
So back to your question, which was,
well, is it possible? Like
is it possible?
Right.
So here, let's get into that. So you're not going to have enough money to do everything you want, right?
Either all at the same time or at all.
At all, ever. Like if you
wouldn't want to do it all at the same time anyway, because try driving somewhere where there's construction literally.
Yeah.
True. You're right.
Well, and also your capacity to deliver, even as an organization, you don't have enough project managers and you don't have enough, people to hire to be able to do that, right?
Sure.
But it comes down to understanding what you own, understanding the condition that it's in, have a system to logically tag and track your equipment, put in predictive maintenance, predictive technology so you know what's happening in your field. So it gets down to prioritization. That's what I'm trying to get to. And how do you prioritize your capital investments, right? You would never full scale replace everything, and it makes no sense to approach it that way. But what drives your prioritization? So we could talk about what I do now, because I'm now working in strategic services, right? And with that, what we do is identify the gaps in service that our clients are facing. So they have a desired outcome. We want to operate 24/7. We need to be efficient. And what is in the way of them achieving their mission, vision, and values? So what are their mission, vision, and values? What drives them? Are they interested in, are they driven by affordability? Are they driven by their customer expectations? Are they driven by energy conservation? Like, what are their key values, right? Yep. And when you understand that and work with them, you actually create systems where you're supporting the implementation of their capital plans, their maintenance strategies, and their staffing and workforce development around those values. And the thing that's cool about that, it's not just initiating, overall it's risk mitigation, right? You're reducing your risk. But the thing that's cool about that in my mind is when people working in an organization, especially with an environmental mission, they understand how their work affects their broader purpose,
Yep.
you get a much better engaged workforce, and they feel empowered and they feel part of the mission, even if they're turning wrenches or putting files in file cabinets, right? And if you have that kind of organization and you're clear about what your values and goals are, you could prioritize around those things. I'm not saying it's easy.
Yeah.
But if I'm prioritizing about climate and resiliency, I'm going to have a different portfolio of what we emphasize in our organization. If I'm prioritizing around something else. But what we're trying to do is get organizations to be less reactive, more planned, more predictive, and ultimately more reliable and resilient, and working with what their values are, right?
Yeah, of course.
That's kind of how we're punching.
I like how you mentioned prioritization, because when you were going through outlining all of the outcomes, so it's important for you to get an understanding as to what the desired outcomes for each municipality you're working with. Like, what are those? And as you were listing what the possibilities could be, I'm nodding my head like, yeah, that too. So what would happen if a utility came back and said, yeah, all of it? And then you're in a position where, like, all right, so I get it, but we're going to need to prioritize now. So what's most important? What's what's going to get you the closest to all of your desired outcomes based on ranking of order, right? And we've never come across, now tell me, Pam, if you have, but Kevin and I have never come across an overfunded utility.
Never seen that. I mean,
Right.
there's different degrees of underfunded. Exactly.
Yep.
Yes, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So no, you're not going to get everything, but how do you achieve your future desired state? This is where the role of technology should be evaluated as well. But let me tell you a story about technology. Well, I'm sitting.
Hit me. I was going to go to workforce, but let's go right to technology.
Oh yeah. Well, they're related. They're totally.
All right, let's do it. All right.
So, here we go. So I'm, as a deputy commissioner in New York City, huge infrastructure, 14 wastewater treatment plants, 7,000 miles of pipelines, and I would get approached by vendors frequently about, hey, check this out. I could put sensors in your collection system. We could put the series of gates that open and close, and you could find, smart retention, more volume in your collection system, less CSOs. Right. I'm like, that's so cool. Yeah. So in my treatment plants, we're still kind of transitioning away from using clipboards. We're trying to use, handheld tablets. And there's no way we were ready to go there. That could, that even might be a vision of more automation and more remote sensing, but culturally and technically, I can't say yes to that. Yeah. And there have been examples in many public utilities and many businesses where they adopted technology. They think it's going to be great. It's going to do all this stuff for them, and it fails. The organization is not ready for it. It's mismatched to their capability and their interest and their capacity. So you have to have the organization behind you and the readiness to go there. And so when you talk about the workforce, yes, there's sometimes I would ask, what do you need? We need more people. We need more money.
Right.
We need more people.
Two basic needs that never go away. Right.
But what you really need to do is create a culture, create business systems and processes and tools and technologies that move you from this reactive state to a more planned state. Right. And when you have those in place, you're much more effective on spending the money that you have. And your staff is much more engaged and capable, and you could actually transition into being a more stable, less reactive organization. Being reactive is super expensive. You're spending your time fixing stuff that's broken and not really looking at increasing your ability to be reliable and planned. You just, basically, I'm driven by the public respect for the public dollar. Yeah. The more effective and efficient we are, the better it is for our public. I look at it as, somebody said to me once, you should spend the money of the public like it's your own money. And I said, no. You should spend the money of the public like it's the poorest person in your collection, in your service area's money. And that's when you start making the best decisions about how to be most effective.
No, without a doubt. That's a great way to look at it. And I want to just take it back to the workforce example that you brought up. And with that, so there was a lot of, I guess it would be the baby boomer generation, right? That is still, work. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Work. Yeah. We're Gen X here. So
Yeah.
we've seen the baby boomers and we've seen millennials and now we have Gen Z coming into the workforce, and a lot of the baby boomers are the ones that are talking about the silver tsunami, right? How they're all retiring or going to retire, but there's still quite a big representation of that generation in the workforce in the water and wastewater market. And when you brought up the fact of predictive analytics, basically switching from playing defense to playing offense, a lot of that technology wasn't around or even deemed possible when the boomer workforce first started in the industry, right? So it's got to be difficult for many of them to understand that A, this is even a capability, and B, is it worth it for them to change the way they do their daily and the common? But here's the thing. What we're finding is as newer Gen X and millennials and Gen Z come in, boomers in that part of the workforce are much more amenable to it. They're understanding it better because they're learning from this new generation coming in. And they're welcoming the input, and they're more welcoming to, wow, all right, I had no idea that this technology existed. And if you're here to kind of help teach me how to utilize this technology that I have not been using for 30, 40 years, that's a win. And that was an unexpected blessing in terms of workforce for this market that we're seeing. I don't know if you're seeing the same thing, but an acceptance from traditional water, wastewater workers that have been around for decades, the acceptance of this new technology and the new workforce coming in to sort of carry the baton. Are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, I think it depends on the individual, and also depends on sort of the culture of the organization, right?
Sure.
But what you're hitting on to me is like you've got people who've been in the industry 30, 40 plus years who know it like the back of their hand. They know the equipment. They they don't need vibration monitors. They can touch something and go, the bearing's a little off here,
Blindfolded and earmuffed, they could still do their job.
Yeah, exactly. And so, so they may or may not be able to jump at these newer technologies. It's encouraging when you have the younger or newer staff wanting to learn from them, right? How do you set up a system for that knowledge transfer? Because I'm not going to hire anybody who's going to come in with that 30 to 40 year person's knowledge.
Yeah.
So I had the greatest privilege of my career in that I've had many awesome privileges.
This is just one of the many.
Just one of the many was there was a point where I became the plant chief, the plant manager for West Point wastewater treatment plant over here in Seattle in Discovery Park. I don't know if you've been here, but it's in a beautiful park. It used to be a military base, actually.
I have
right on the waterfront.
Yeah, beautiful out there.
Top of the digester, view of the mountains. Can't beat it. In fact, a friend of mine got married on the top of one of my digesters.
Get out of here! On top of the digester?
Well, don't tell Tony because I didn't get permission. But
all right, all right, it's our secret, right? It's just us now, just us talking. Go ahead.
Best view. Yeah. Still the best view in Seattle. Top of the digesters. So when I started there, it was at the time King County was building a third regional wastewater plant. And we needed to add a third facility by mandate from the council that we really don't want you to add more operations staff. You're going to figure out how to do it. We're like, okay. So what we did is we adopted an approach called reliability-centered maintenance. And I was at the treatment plant from the ground up. And it was driven by knowledge transfer and logic, okay? We scrubbed every single preventative maintenance work order. We realigned how we did planning and scheduling for maintenance activities. Some of it was pretty simple where, okay, I'm doing my monthly and my quarterly inspections at this one part of the plant. I'm going to do it today and tomorrow. So what? But instead of that, we made it so like you're doing things much more logically, how it fits together. We started to put the work orders not just in the actual wrench time, but also how long it took you to get there, how long it took you to get your tools, and just recreated sort of a whole system of predictive maintenance on top of all that. And when we did that, we were able to make people a lot more productive. Now, that's cool. And it was a lot of knowledge capture, documentation of the steps of how you do a work order. It was great. What happened emotionally to people was what was more difficult. And I was in this place where I controlled the conversation with the shop floor folks.
Right.
Who were feeling, they would say to me stuff like, I feel like I'm a number. I used to be able to plan my own day.
Sure.
And now it's all scheduled, and there's this fear that you're overlooking them. And if they take too long to do something, you're going to come down. Like, all this stuff was going on. It was really important to look at the cultural adoption of that stuff to move it forward. And what we were able to do is really do a ton of knowledge capture through documenting. So now my work orders had a lot more information from the old folks. It was thrilling for them to like see what they knew to be handed down in a system that they knew was going to stay forever. And it was a huge, great learning curve, or a learning education for newer staff coming on.
Right, without a doubt. I mean, it's important for municipalities to get this right, because if you don't have that kind of synergy amongst your workforce, nothing really is going to work. You're just going to keep doing what you've always done and not really make any kind of impactful progress. So that story resonates. I'm sure it resonates with a lot of our listeners, a lot of our viewers, in terms of what does real life look like inside a municipality, and how do all the different stakeholders and workers within the municipality what are their needs to work together and feel as if they're part of the process. So important message to take away from that. I do want to touch on one other thing that you had mentioned in terms of what municipalities are faced with, that we haven't spent a lot of time here on the Water Online show talking about. And I would be anxious to get your opinion, story, whatever you would like to add to it. But community expectations, I mean, that's a big one, because when at the end of the day, the community is our boss, without a doubt. I mean, that is your customer and your boss. So from community expectations, do you find that in today's setting, in today's environment, are community expectations out of whack, or are they, do they underestimate the capabilities of a utility? Do they overestimate? Do they think they're being charged too much money? What do you think the tone of the community is right now?
Do they think they're being charged too much money?
Always, right? Yeah.
Is that a question or a statement?
Right. Take your pick.
Yeah. So they're important players, obviously, and you have to have a lot of respect for that input. And there's options. You could become isolated from them, and reactive as opposed to proactive. And when you become reactive, you're dealing with complaints. You're looking at complaints. Or you're creating your own story, and you're out there, one-on-one with every project, with every bill that you send, open to communication, understanding what their interests and benefits that we're bringing to them, so that they understand what we're bringing to them. So are they out of whack? It's how do you bring them into the fold and understand their drivers? When I think of the conflicts come up with, a lot of times environmental organizations, I'm an environmentalist, have been since the third grade, big time, 1970s, all into the earth stuff, man.
Right.
Since grade school.
Yeah.
Pure. And they're often the conflict comes because they've decided what a solution is.
Yeah.
Okay, they have an interest, and they've decided their position is you have to treat more and spend. One person said to me once, we need to build the storm sewers 5 times bigger than they are. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That would be beneficial.
Yep. Yep. Tomorrow. We'll get started tomorrow.
Yes. There are lots of reasons why that might not be the way to increase your stormwater retention.
Right.
However, but their interest was let's make water quality better. Let's control stormwater better. Their position was something over here, and I feel like that's often the issue. The conflict comes. It comes around nitrogen, nutrient control. It's like we need the wastewater plants to go to zero nutrient because it's affecting specifically the water body and the fisheries, right?
Sure.
Their interest is healthy fish.
Yeah.
Their solution is you need to have no nitrogen. If you look at the whole system, the system of where the wastewater plants sit and the other inputs of the water body, and the best outcomes for healthy fishery, including dissolved oxygen and reducing algae blooms and stuff like that, you would come up with a holistic set of solutions that optimally address the outcome that the environmental groups and we share, right?
Yeah.
One of the constraints we have is that our regulatory tools are very specific to the point source folks, and that's where the hammers can go. So that's where they go, whether the impact is best addressed that way or not. So when you start to think systematically and you get to people's interest and values and you bring them together, and you don't start asking what should we do, you start asking what do you care about.
Right. Exactly.
Now, it also is helpful if you have a diversity of your customer base, where there's advocates for people who, community groups where people are struggling with paying their food bills, let alone their water bills. Like, what's their interest, right? So there's ways that we could come together. It's not easy or quick, but when it's thorough and it's done well, you see a lot more collaboration happening. So there's some really good like watershed scale collaborative efforts out there. Chesapeake Bay did a really good job. There's a group in Louisiana who's doing really good work around resiliency and flood protection, because they're working collectively in a collaborative approach with a broad range of stakeholders. So when we're doing this together, it's actually ideal.
So, I mean, there seems to be a lot that you bring to the table here, from Brown and Caldwell out to the municipalities. So I'd like to give you an opportunity to talk to the municipalities out there about what they should be keeping an eye out for as an indicator as to when they might need to invite you to come on in, right? Like, these are the things you need to keep an eye out for, or if you're thinking about doing ABC, maybe give us a call, send us a note so we can see if we can be of some help. So what would some of those indicators be, or desired outcomes be that you and Brown and Caldwell can help them with? I'm sure it's plentiful.
Well, yeah, I mean, Brown and Caldwell, fabulous organization. I hired them a lot before I joined, long time ago in my previous world.
Right.
Produces outstanding delivery of infrastructure, and a lot of engineering firms do that, and they do it well. What is needed in my mind, and why I'm here and why I'm trying to grow this in our industry, is that we're delivering this infrastructure, but it's connected to an organization, and traditionally an organization or a business, a consultant who's delivering that infrastructure, that's their world.
Yeah.
When you're on the public side, that was this much of everything I thought about, cared about, and had to deal with.
Yeah.
Once it got to the design, and once it got to the RFP, and we picked somebody. Yeah. Cool.
Right.
Everything before that, my evaluation of what we need, my staffing plans, how do I communicate my need to the people who are going to fund me? How do I get the funding? How do I enable my staff to be able to manage the projects that we need to come up against to do that? And then I get this asset. How do we operate and maintain it? How does it fit in my cycle of my business cycle? How does it fit into my future optimization plans and my planning? So there's, sometimes I call it the handoff, but you hand it off and then what? And, often you could plop a piece of infrastructure in a facility where they don't have a very good asset management plan. They don't have a good maintenance strategy. They're not capable, like their staff skills aren't there yet, and you could train them, but it's not. The more it's connected to the rest of their organization, the more successful that project will be, and the more successful that organization will be. So, so my interest is why I do this now is that I really want to help organizational excellence in our industry.
Right.
I feel passionate about that. And it's not just about producing the best product. It is about producing the best product for water and wastewater and
Sure.
great biosolids and reusing energy. But it's about being an important institution for those communities. And if I think about creating the best place for workers to be in terms of their job satisfaction and meeting what they connect their work to the meaningfulness of what we do every day,
yeah,
that's the best thing. Because once I know that they're connected and they know the importance of what their work is and how it's connected to our greater mission,
yeah,
they feel it. And I've seen it transform people, individuals, to really want to be there and really understand the importance of what they do. And that's what I want to create more of. Connect other, I'm very into connecting utilities with each other to help each other understand the challenges they may face.
I mean, it seems to me, Kev, tell me if you got the same vibe. If you're a municipality out there and you are thinking through like, all right, how do I, like, end sentence there. If there's any question in your mind, and we're not talking about like, how do I, flip this switch, or how do I, pull this lever or do that, but how do I accomplish this outcome? If you're a municipality out there asking yourself that question, that's a good time to bring in Brown and Caldwell to talk about what those outcomes are and get some expertise on how do I. Does that ring right to you, Kev?
I mean, I wish we had Pam Elardo's for every utility everywhere, because everything she's talking about makes so much sense. And but the fact of the matter is, I want to get Pam's opinion on this, is that over the past 4 years, ASCII, the American Society of Civil Engineers, puts out the report card. And 4 years ago, we were at like a C minus, and released
C minus,
and we're at like a C. And
right.
when you look at stormwater, which I know is close to Pam's heart, it was a D minus or D plus. It was bad.
We passed.
It's bad.
We passed.
It's like me passing chemistry.
I think the wastewater one was a D.
Okay.
A D. It might have been a D plus, but it was a D.
Right.
It was, you don't want to bring that report card home to mom.
Right. No. Broadly, it remained kind of level, stagnant, and bad stagnant, because they weren't good in the first place. And then 4 years later, they improved only slightly, if at all. So some of these things you talk about, predictive maintenance and asset management plans, they've been around, even some of the more advanced technologies. And I know everybody's different on the curve of adoption. But what do you think's getting in the way, or what can we do to sort of, level jump here so that next time around our report card looks a little better?
Yeah. Well, there definitely is a role for technology. Don't get me wrong, right? There's definitely a role for the most appropriate, culturally sensitive, communicated, capable implementation of technology in helping us get there, because we can gain a lot of data. Okay, there's we can gain a lot of intelligence, but it doesn't make you wise, right? We can gain a lot of data, but it doesn't necessarily make you intelligent either. So how do you capture data and use that more intelligently? But when I think about, kind of back to you're talking before about working with organizations, you're defining my current state is this, my future state of what I want to be is this. And when you start asking, what are the barriers between here and here? And you might hear, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough people. Okay, so when that list I gave you earlier about the challenges people face, okay, we did a conference not too long ago, the utility management conference, and we ran a workshop. And one of the questions we asked people is, we listed the challenges. And the question was, what needs to change in your organization to meet these challenges?
Good question.
Okay, you know what the answer was? You think the answer might be more money, more people. The answer was, what needs to change? That was the question. We need to change our culture and our systems to support the change.
Interesting.
I have my future vision. I need to change my culture and my systems. My business process systems are bad.
Right.
Handing off from planning to engineering is flawed. There's silos in my organization, right? Things are stuck. They're stuck in planning. We don't have, we can't prioritize. We don't have a good process for business cases, evaluations for each of each of our priorities. I don't have my operations team doesn't get along with the engineering team. There's a terrible relationship. They're not involved in the capital planning. They shouldn't be. They don't have to be. I mean, we hear this kind of stuff. So the number one thing is cultures and systems need to change. Right. The second one was workforce transformations. The third one was effective communications.
Yeah.
The fourth one was understanding stakeholders. And the last one was data access and data availability to make decisions from data. So when you look at it from that angle, we're talking about optimizing your internal business process systems. We're talking about optimizing how you work together within your organization. I kind of wish I had slides I can show you because we get very graphic about how organizations fit together from your mission, your vision, your planning, your strategy, all that kind of cool stuff.
But you're doing a good job at painting a picture, with your words. So the thing you did note in there too is communication with constituents, right? That's part of it. So it's separate of money. I mean, that's still a factor, but separate of money, it's policy, right? It
sounds like people are just stuck in the mud in the old way of doing things that wasn't necessarily efficient.
And they want to get out. They want to change the process. They want to change the way that they are doing business. And that's where, Brown and Caldwell can come in and really help spark that evolution. Do I have that right?
Spark the evolution.
That's sure. It. That's
it's more like we use the word trusted partner.
Yeah.
Right. But it's more like being a strategic collaborator, like helping you be the best. People know more about themselves and their organizations than anybody can come in and do for them. Right. But it's about being a collaborator with them to really achieve what they're trying to achieve. But I found it really interesting that culture and internal systems were, top of the list.
I wouldn't have guessed that. Kev, would you?
No, I would have said money.
I would have said money. Right. Without a doubt. So, all right. Well, spark the evolution. Pam, I want to thank you for joining us here today. How could somebody get in touch with you if they wanted more information on how you could help?
No problem sending me an email.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to flash it on the screen, but it's, do you want me to state it?
Get it out there.
Yeah, we'll get it out there, but go ahead.
All right, let's get it out there.
Go ahead and verbalize it for our Spotify.
Okay. PELARDO at BRWNCALD.com.
Perfect. Love it. Well, Pam, I wish I had another hour to keep you on, and I'm wondering.
I know, I do too.
Would you mind if it coming back on the show? Because I want to hear more stories.
Ooh, cool.
We love stories here. So I'm going to leave it to Brown and Caldwell and Kevin to work out when we can get you back on. But
I would love that.
I want to thank you very much for sparing some time here for us. There's such good information in there and a lot of history. I loved each story because each one of them had a lesson for our listeners and in ways that they can continue to spark the evolution. I'm telling you, that should be the new tag for your division here at Brown and Caldwell. Again, thanks for coming on. Pam Elardo with Brown and Caldwell. And for all of you out there listening, watching, we appreciate you spending your time here with us. And on behalf of Kevin and myself and all of us here at the Water Online Show, we look forward to seeing you next time.